Hello there, my math scholars. We've got a new unit to start today, and this unit is all about percents. So let's get started with that I can statement. Our I can statement for today is I can solve percent problems. So first of all, let's talk about what does the word percent mean. So you see there we've got the per and we've got the cent. Now per, that's just like the English word per. You might have 30 students per classroom or 2,000 students per school. But what about the cent? That means 100. The same way cent, like in century, means 100 years, or 1 cent is 100th of a dollar. So that cent means 100. So when you have something like 8% written, you could say that's the same thing as 8 out of 100. And we would write that like this, 8 out of 100. Okay, and then if you take your calculator and you divide 8 by 100 and solve that out for a decimal, you're going to get 0.08. So if you've heard your teachers talk about how to go from a percent to a decimal, you just move the decimal point 2 spaces. This is why. Right here is why. So you would take that 8%, it has the decimal starting right there. You move it to the left 2, and you wind up with this. So just 2 different ways to write the same thing. Now, why do we use percents? Well, cliffhanger here. We'll give you that answer at the end of class. All right, so there are 3 main types of percent problems. And all of them can be solved using an equation, which I'm sure is not that shocking to you guys. We solve a lot of things with equations. These equations are set up the same way every time. Once the equation is set up, we will use our equation solving skills to find the missing piece. Here's the format that nearly all of the percent problems have. So 2 of the blanks represent numbers. And 1 of the blanks represents a percent. So basically you have some number here, and then you have a percent, I'm just going to write P, and then you have a number. So blank number is whatever percent of another number. All right, so let's decode that a little bit. So remember, percents will have a percent symbol, which looks like this, circle, line, circle. They'll have that percent symbol behind them. So if you were going to say 5%, you would write it like this. You would not write it like that, okay? So they have that symbol behind them, and they should always be written as decimal numbers. So like when you're putting them in an equation, you definitely want to convert them to decimals, okay? In fact, that's what it says. They should be written as decimal numbers when using them in an equation or when entering them into a calculator. There we go. All right. Now here, talking about decoding the is and the of and everything, the word is usually translates to equals. So when you see the word is, think equals. Like for example, 2 times 4 is 8, and I'm going to write it like this with an equal sign. 2 times 4 is 8. So that is corresponds with the equal sign. What about over here? It says the word of usually translates to multiply. That might feel a little bit newer for you. So of is going to generally mean multiply. For example, 3/4 of 12, 3/4 of 12, you could do it with a dot, or you could do it with parentheses, same thing, is 9. So again, for the is, I'm writing the equal sign. So let me just read this back. 3/4 of 12 is 9. So that's how it works. Let's do some examples so you can kind of see this in context. All right, example number 1, solve the problems, round the answers to the nearest hundredth if necessary. All right, so it says, what is 14% of 82? All right, so there's going to be 3 elements to all these equations. There's going to be a number, a percent, and another number. You're going to know 2 of these things. One of them is going to be unknown. So first of all, let's figure out what is unknown here. So right where they wrote the word what, that's your unknown. I'm just going to put an X there. So I'm representing the what with an X. So X is 14% of 82. Okay, let's translate that English into some math symbols. So the X is going to stay an X. The is going to become your equal sign. 14% is going to go right here. But remember, I need to write it as a decimal, not as a percent. So I'm going to move that decimal 2 spaces, and it's going to be like this, 0.14 of, so that means multiply, 82. All right, so did you see what I did there? You got your x, what became x, is equals, 14% became 0.14, of became multiplying 82, well, that one stayed as 82, at least something stayed the same, right? So now as far as solving this equation goes, piece of cake. You just leave the x there and you multiply this on your calculator. And definitely do use calculators for this stuff. There's no need to spend all your time doing this multiplication by hand when we have good tools available to us. So I encourage you to do that. It looks like our answer is 11.48. And our instructions say round to the nearest hundredth, so this is a hundredth, so we don't need to round. We can leave it just like that. All right, let's translate part B here. All right, 18 is 66% of what number? Okay, so that 18 can stay in 18 is, remember that's going to be our equals, 66%. Well, we need to write it as a decimal, otherwise it stays the same. So moving that decimal place to right there, of indicates multiplication. I'll write my little dot for that. And then what number? Well, we don't know what it is, so we're going to represent it with a variable. I'm going to put an x. Okay, now it's just a one-step equation. You guys know how to solve this. We need to get the x by itself, so get rid of that 0.66 by dividing by 0.66. All right, that's going to make this just go away, and then the 18 divided by 0.66. One of the interesting things about dividing by a decimal that's less than 1 is it actually makes the number bigger. So if you're one of those people who likes to double check your answers, don't be surprised when the number actually gets bigger. So it looks like we've got 27.272727 rounded to the nearest hundredth, and that'll be just 27.27. Okay, so that was our missing number. All right, so now 22 is what percent of 48? All right, so 22, that's just going to stay 22, is going to become our equal sign. What percent? Well, that's going to be an x because we don't know what the number is. And then of indicates multiplication, and then 48. All right, so now we still have a one-step equation. We need to get that x by itself. So you have x times 48. You got to get rid of that 48 by dividing by 48 on both sides, of course. Now 22 divided by 48 gives us a decimal, so let's just get that written down really quick. X equals 0.4583. Now don't round your nearest hundredth just yet, and I'll tell you why. I'll show you why. It's because it's a percent. Let me show you what I mean. So this problem actually has an extra step, and that's because we're solving for what percent. So once you find this number, that is a decimal. That is not a percent, and we need to convert it to a percent. So if you remember, you're going to take that decimal point and move it 2 spaces to the right, and then write that with a percent sign. So 45.83% equals x. Now at this point, you'll see I do have it rounded to the nearest hundredth, so we're good to go. All right, just want to show you one more thing really quick. All of these are actually proportions. So you know how percent was something out of 100? You could set any of them up as a proportion. So 14% means literally 14 out of 100 is going to equal, and then we said, let's see, the total is 82, and then the part is 11.48. So this should be a true proportion. Let's just cross multiply and make sure. 14 times 82 equals 1148. So that should be the same thing as, well, you can see there 100 times 11.48 is definitely the same thing. So it balances, it's a proportion, we did it right. So anytime you're doubting yourself and you want to set it up as a proportion, you sure can do that. But using equations will probably be the fastest and neatest way to go most of the time. All right, so far this season, the Elkridge Middle School girls basketball team has won 7 of their 9 games. What percent have they won? Okay, now we have all these blanks. Something is something percent of something. Okay, Well, now, what does the question ask us? It says, what percent have they won? So we don't know what the percentage is. So I'm going to go ahead and put my X right there. You know what? I'm not going to use an X. I'm going to use a P. If you want to use an X, that's fine. But I like using a P here because it reminds me when I get to the end of the problem that I need to convert that back into a percent. If I'd remembered, I would have done that up here too, but it's not a big problem. Okay, so let's read this again. 7 of their 9 games. So of their 9 games. And down here it says of blank. So of their 9 is going to become of 9. And then 7 would go here. 7 is what percent of 9? Now once we have that, we can use these same methods as we used up here and translate into an equation. So 7 becomes 7 equals. P of becomes times. You can write it with parentheses or with the dot. And then 9 goes here. All right. Now once you have that, you just have to get the P by itself. So divide by 9 on both sides. And you are going to get whatever 7 divided by 9 is. Let's find out. 7 divided by 9, 0.7777, repeating. Okay. 0.7777. I'm not going to round just yet because as you will remember, it is a percent. And so we need to be moving that decimal point a little bit before we're done. So take it, move it to the right 2 spots. And you're going to wind up with 77.7. Now, I have a bunch of 7s repeating, so I'm going to round that last 7 up to an 8, just like my calculator did way over there. 0.78% equals P. And that is your answer. All right, let's go on to part E. In a survey of 1,050 students at Elk Ridge Middle School, 56% said they had a smartphone. How many students have a smartphone? Okay, so first of all, let's do the easy part. Where's that 56 going to go? It's the percentage, so we're going to put it right here in front of the percent sign. Excellent. Okay, and then it says in a survey of 1,050 students. Now it says of 1,050. So where do you think that 1,050 is going to go? How about after the of, right? Yeah, let's do it. So put that there. And then this one, we don't know what it is, so it's going to be an X. All right, so now let's write it as an equation. X is, in other words, equals 56%. So let's make it into a decimal. Move that decimal place 2 places over. And then it's going to be of 1,050, so times 1,050. All right. Grab that calculator and do the math on this. What did I do to my calculator? Oh, man. All right. 0.56 times 1050, and you get 588. Okay, and you can always ask yourself, does this make sense? It looks like 56% of 1,050 students have a smartphone. Well, you may be familiar with the idea that 50% is half, so this is about half, and is 588 about half of that number? Yeah, it is. So if that helps you double check, then definitely use that. So your answer would be 588 students. And there you go. Okay, part F. Jamie got 35 questions correct on the math test and scored 79.54%. How many questions were on the test? Okay, let's start with the easy part. That's our percent, right? 79.54. These blanks are just barely big enough. Okay, he got 35 questions correct on the math test. 35 out of how many? 35 of 50 or 35 of 60 or 35 of 40? I don't know. We don't know how many out of, and so the of is going to be the blank. 35 is kind of like the answer to how many he got right. So we're going to put it right there. And that's going to say, or that's going to translate to 35 equals, remember to move your decimal point here, so 0.7954, and also please don't round at this point. If you do any rounding, make sure you do it as your very last step. And then of x means times x, so I'm just going to put my x right there. Now you're going to divide through by 0.7954. Just be careful entering it into that calculator. Make sure you don't mistype any keys or anything. Other than that, you should be good to go. 35 divided by 0.7954, looks like I did that right, and you get 44.003, something like that. 44.003 equals x. Now let's look at it. It says how many questions were on the test, and we're supposed to round to the nearest hundredth. So really, you can't have 3,000th of a question, right? It's just going to be a whole question. So let's just round it to 44 questions. Okay, and that's how you do that one. All right, so it says there are other ways to solve percent problems like proportions, but using an equation is usually the best because it's faster and easier most of the time, especially with practice, right? Besides, using equations gives us a chance to practice the equation solving techniques that will be used in every math class you ever take. This is true. This is very true. They're just that useful, you know? Okay, next page. Take a quick look at these. Do you notice anything different? Like maybe the order. Okay, 20% of 82 is what number? All right, first step, 20%. Let's make that into a decimal. You can go with 0.2 or you can go with 0.20. It does not matter. Of 82 is going to indicate times 82 is what number? So you're going to do is going to be the equals. What number becomes the x? And then you're just going to solve that out. You'll do 0.2. You could put a 0 there if you want. It's not going to change anything. Times 82, and that's going to be 16.4. With decimals, if there was a 0 in front of the 2, that's when you really need to put the 0. When there's a 0 at the end of the decimal, that's when you can leave it off if you want to. All right, 52% of what number is 10? So 0.52 of what number? So of times what number? Let's use a variable for that. So x is, let's put equals, and then 10. All right, so you have 52 times x equals 10. You're going to get rid of that 0.52 by dividing by 0.52. So 10 divided by 0.52 gives us that answer of, well, it's pretty long, but we're just going to go ahead and round to the nearest hundredth, 19.23. All right. Okay, now this one's interesting. It says what percent? All right, so I'm going to write a P. You don't have to, but it's a helpful reminder that you might want to move the decimal point and use a percent sign at the end, right? So what percent of 8? So P times 8 is 3 equals 3. Okay, nice and neat there. Let's divide everything by 8, and you're going to get P equals 3 divided by 8, and that's going to be 0.375. Now, is that my final answer? No, because it's a percent problem, right? So let's convert it to a percent. You're going to move that decimal 2 spots, and you're going to get P equals 37.5%. Okay, guys, we're getting to it now. Another great thing about using the equation technique is it doesn't really matter how the questions are arranged. You still use the same words, same ideas to translate it into an equation. The numbers and operations might be in a different order, but the techniques are just the same. As long as we're careful, we'll still get the right answers. Okay, so thought questions, and here it is again, same question we had as a teaser at the beginning. Why do we use percents? Well, let's look at this first. Would you rather get 17 out of 20 on an assignment, 17 out of 20, or 30 out of 36 on an assignment? Which one is a better grade? Well, it's really, really hard to compare because they have different denominators, right? You don't really know what is what. But if you divide them out, you get a percentage, and that makes for easy comparison. And so that's what I'm going to write here. This is why we use percents, for easy comparison. All right, so like, for example, 17 out of 20 would be a score of 85%. Whereas 30 out of 36 would be a score of 83%. So it looks like this would be the better score. So that's why we do it. Now just a little thought question. You can come back to it after you've done the assignment if you want. 3 out of 8 is what percent? So this is an exception of what the word of usually means. So I have been telling you this whole time that of means multiply, right? But in this case, 3 times 8, 24, that's just not what it means. it means 3 out of 8 would mean kind of more like what we were talking about with ratios and proportions, 3 out of 8. And then you would divide it to find the percentage. 3 divided by 8, so 0.375. And then final step with a percent is to make it into, whoopsie, to move the decimal and make it into a percentage. And don't forget to use that percent sign when you do it. So your assignment for today, you've got 8 questions on the front. It's all about translating those words into an equation. And then on the second page, you just have 4 word problems. Now the wording of these is a little bit different, so read them 2 or 3 times and make sure you're really feeling what they mean. Like for example, here, there's this club with 35 members and you need to have like 60% of them vote on something. How many members have to be present to have a vote? So for example, could this answer be more than 35? Would it be possible that they need more than 35 people to vote if they only have 35 members? No, you know that your answer is going to be less than 35. So just thinking little things like that beforehand can kind of set you off on the right path, or at least help you double check after you get the answer. All right, yeah, if you have any questions on your assignment, let me know. I'm always here for you, and thanks so much for watching. Bye.